I have never seen a single royal family member act as shamelessly improper as Meghan Markle did.
I remember we're in the car and driving up, and he said, "You know how to curtsy, right?" And I just thought it was a joke.
Stick with me, you and I are about to watch Sophie completely tear apart the entire royal family. But she did not stop. She mercilessly exposed the dark secrets Meghan spent years frantically trying to bury. She was completely done with Meghan. The shocking truth: she got kicked out for shamelessly flirting with William, the future king. Meghan's real target, William. The deeply disturbing flirtation she aimed directly at him left the future king backing away in pure disgust. The actual reason she fled the palace, a truth so insanely ugly, it completely shatters every single lie the public was fed. Everything we believed was a total lie. And Sophie just blew the entire massive cover up completely wide open. The woman wanting the wrong crown. On April 1st, 2026, an explosive interview clip spread online like absolute wildfire. Then, just as fast, it got frantically scrubbed. But not before thousands of shocked fans had already witnessed it. In that exact clip, Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, publicly accused Meghan Markle of some wildly inappropriate royal conduct. Fans were begging for it to be fake. It absolutely had to be a cruel joke. After all, it was April Fool's Day. Someone out there was surely playing a massive twisted prank on everyone, right? But then noon hit. A growing crowd swore on their lives they saw the raw footage with their own eyes. Every second was terrifyingly, undeniably real. Soon wild rumors exploded across social media. A senior palace representative had supposedly dropped a massive public clarification, stating that Sophie's harsh views actually reflected the strict long-standing rules required to desperately protect the absolute integrity of the royal institution. The palace backed every single word. Sophie wasn't fighting alone. She had the crushing full weight of the entire royal family standing right behind her. The family chose her on purpose. Why? Because she was the one person nobody could ever brush off as just bitter or insecure. Watch closely. What Sophie revealed next completely shatters the fake story we all thought we understood. Sophie alleged that Meghan never even wanted that Sussex title to begin with. Sussex was just a weak consolation prize. Meghan's real target from day one, the Princess of Wales title and the future king holding it. Sophie told the interviewer she warned her husband Edward super early on. Something felt insanely deeply wrong here. Meghan was absolutely not trying to naturally find her place in this family. She was aggressively positioning herself for one very specific high-level target inside. She couldn't care less about the supporting role they actually handed her. Her eyes were locked on the throne. The warning sirens were screaming long before the public ever noticed. Back in 2017, Meghan was just Harry's girlfriend. Absolutely zero official engagement had been announced yet. The palace had firmly refused to clear any public statement regarding their relationship whatsoever. Yet Meghan boldly walked straight into a massive solo interview with Vanity Fair, one of the biggest magazines on the planet, confirming the romance on her own terms completely, without telling Harry's PR team or warning the palace. The royal staff absolutely furious. They secretly described it as her first rogue move. A deliberate signal that she planned to break every rule before officially agreeing to follow them. Then came the infamous Tiara War, right before the May 2018 wedding. We both heard the rumors, but the real story is way wilder. Meghan demanded a specific royal collection. The Queen's dresser, Angela Kelly, flat out refused. Harry literally exploded at palace staff over the harsh decision. But nobody reported the real reason it was denied. The tiara Meghan picked had a dark history. It was among the royal collection pieces, originally belonging to the doomed Russian imperial family, before the 1917 revolution destroyed them. When that empire collapsed, the royal jewels scattered across Europe. Some items were bought perfectly cleanly. Others passed through fleeing people carrying things that were absolutely not theirs. Due to that dark history, the palace maintained incredibly strict rules around those specific pieces. Anyone wearing them needed a flawlessly clean security file, zero gray areas, zero open questions. The massive problem was that Meghan's royal security clearance wasn't fully signed off yet. Her background check actually flagged totally unresolved questions around shady relationships and deep contacts she built during her old Hollywood years. Those exact connections hadn't been fully investigated or cleared. Until they were, that tiara was completely off limits. So, while Harry was screaming over jewelry, you and I finally know the dark truth. It was locked behind an unresolved, a security file stamped with his future wife's name. Honestly, he either didn't know or just didn't care. And the household staff, they never forgot that exact moment. For most of them, it was the chilling realization of exactly what was about to hit them. But whatever happened before the wedding, just a warm up. Stick with me, because what Meghan did once she got inside the family was way more calculated and deeply disturbing than anyone expected. It's the wild stuff the cameras almost missed. When Sophie hit this specific part of the broadcast, everything shifted. That gentle warmth in her voice from the earlier segments, it vanished. Her tone cooled down into something much harder, way more dangerous. She leaned in slightly and dropped a bomb. Meghan's highly suspicious behavior toward William wasn't just a one-off thing. It absolutely wasn't some innocent cultural misunderstanding between a modern American and a strict British institution. This was a calculated pattern, and it all kicked off in May 2018, just 72 hours after Meghan married Harry and officially infiltrated the royal family. With important guests everywhere, Meghan greeted William with an uncomfortably long kiss on the cheek, then grabbed his forearm in a tight, lingering grip. Nobody in that room could brush that off as normal. William's whole body instantly went rigid. The senior staff watching. They immediately exchanged nervous glances. The internal chatter afterward was pure alarm. We're talking about a duchess who had been royalty for under 3 days. Yet, she had already shattered the most basic physical boundaries around the literal future king. Fast forward 5 months. It's October 2018, during a major mental health event right inside Buckingham Palace. Meghan slapped her hand totally flat against William's back while chatting. This wasn't a light brush. It was zero accident. It was a, now pay close attention here. That's the exact intimate gesture you'd only use with your own spouse. Or maybe your parents. Definitely not your husband's brother at a highly formal royal event. William aggressively yanked himself away. It was a totally silent and glaring rejection. She crossed a line that should have been untouchable. Sophie caught it live, and she vividly recalled the exact way. William flinched like he just touched a hot stove. Then came January 2019 and the Royal Foundation Forum, a massive public event where the Core Four teamed up to discuss charity. The public saw a united front, but Sophie caught something else entirely. Meghan flat out rejected the panel's pre-approved seating chart. You know, the standard royal setup that keeps couples together. William next to Catherine Harry beside Meghan. Instead, she aggressively pushed to sit right next to William. Instead. And during the actual talk, she constantly interrupted Catherine, stealing the mic time just to drag the media spotlight right back to herself. Meghan clearly felt her Hollywood fame put her on the same level as the future king and Queen of England. She acted on that ego without a single drop of hesitation. But what the press completely missed was a crazy incident way back in July 2018 at Wimbledon. Meghan hit the tournament arrogantly ordered her bodyguards to physically block cameras in a completely public area and sparked absolute chaos. Days of headlines followed. But you and I know that's just the surface drama. What nobody actually reported was what happened. Inside her exclusive private box, it was strategically positioned to keep her in striking distance of William's inner circle. According to the insiders trapped there, Meghan burned a massive chunk of that afternoon aiming her entire intense focus right at William across the seats. She relentlessly tried to lock him into deep eye contact and private chats. Meanwhile, Catherine was sitting right there in the very same group. One eyewitness who was close by called it so shamelessly obvious it made the whole room sick with tension. Everyone who saw it remembered that red flag for years. Then came March 2021. The palace drops a massive internal HR investigation, and those bullying claims against Meghan instantly shattered the internet. But Sophie just revealed that the real report went way beyond basic staff complaints. We're talking a massive documented timeline of toxic boundary violations spanning years. They had receipts of weird late-night texts fired straight to senior royals totally dodging the official palace channels completely. Insiders logged moments where Meghan forced awkward physical contact onto the Queen and Prince Charles at high-class events. Multiple witnesses swore it looked painfully staged for the cameras lacking any real warmth. But the absolute most destructive detail in that entire file, it gets worse. Meghan was secretly leaking private family conversations straight to her American media pals. She weaponized the Windsor's deepest secrets to artificially boost her own public identity as the sweet, emotionally open, modern girl fighting the cold, heartless British villains. All while the exact people she was, trash talking, sat just one hallway away. Sophie's final breakdown of Meghan's real master plan was chilling. She never actually wanted to fit in. She wanted absolute control as the most powerful person in the room. Meghan demanded star status. And trust me, if she couldn't be queen, she was going to ruin the queen's life. Unbearable. Then, in late 2018, Catherine did something that completely shattered the entire public image everyone believed. And stick with me here, because she did not just cry quietly in some palace corridor, nor did she weakly confide in a friend over the phone. Instead, Catherine grabbed a pen and filed a strictly formal documented complaint right against Meghan through a completely private channel to a top senior official. This was not some basic staff grievance quietly processed through human resources, and she absolutely refused to let lawyers handle it for her. This was deeply personal. Catherine was literally putting her own name on the permanent record, stating completely plainly that her sister-in-law's behavior toward her husband had crossed every single line and could no longer be tolerated without hard proof. The crazy part, it never leaked. Not one single journalist caught wind. The palace totally buried it with that heavy, suffocating silence that only massive wealth and absolute power can actually sustain forever. But it did not vanish. And this is where the story turns absolutely savage. 3 years later, when the 2021 formal review ripped right through the royal household, that exact complaint was dragged back out and slapped dead center of the whole process. Sources with direct inside knowledge confirmed the document was sitting right there, fully referenced and counted, leaving absolutely nowhere left to hide. Sophie did not reveal anything the palace had not already formally recorded. Catherine had already put it all in writing years before the public was ever allowed to know. As for William, he never gave Meghan an inch. His icy reserve held completely, blocking every single approach she tried to make. Every gesture was answered with a step backward. Every advance was shut down with professional distance that absolutely no amount of persistence could break through. Now, pay close attention here, because when it became clear William would never budge, her strategy did not just stop. It completely changed direction. What happened next was colder, way more calculated, and so much more destructive than anything that had come before. Because this time around, the main target was not William at all. It was the only person in that royal family that Meghan could easily sink her fangs into, firmly locking the door. This is how Harry got taken. Sophie's voice genuinely dropped when she got to this exact part, and not just for dramatic effect. She dropped it the way a person does when what they are about to say genuinely causes them pain. Sophie revealed that Meghan already knew everything. She knew about the terrible, tragic fate of Harry's mother. Meghan completely understood the heavy trauma that had been sitting unhealed deep inside him for well over 2 solid decades. She knew what it had caused Harry, spending his whole life as the spare son in a ruthless family hierarchy where your birth order literally dictates your entire existence. Meghan mapped out every single wound, Sophie explained, and she did not try to heal even one of them. Instead, Meghan deliberately pressed on every vulnerable wound. She found weaponizing that exact pain just to keep Harry right where she needed him, hearing that brutal truth spoken out loud, so plainly and directly on a live national broadcast, was easily one of the most deeply disturbing moments of the entire 5 hour interview. By 2019, the campaign against William permanently stalled. So Meghan turned her complete focus right onto Harry and began dismantling his remaining relationships. We have all seen this tactic before. It was not one massive dramatic fight. It happened slowly, incredibly carefully, over months of tiny moves that each looked perfectly innocent. When William's office reached out just to arrange a simple hangout between the brothers, the responses came back identically every single time. Meghan claimed they were too busy. Meghan insisted they needed space. Message by message denied request. By request, Harry's direct lifeline to his brother was completely severed. These two brothers, who literally walked together right behind their mother's coffin as heartbroken teenagers who had heavily leaned on one another through every trial that strict family put them through, eventually stopped speaking to each other completely. Sophie called it a brutal psychological blockade, and that description was dead on. Meghan carefully positioned herself as the single only person on earth who genuinely understood Harry, spending all that same time making absolutely sure he believed that every single person who loved him before she showed up was now secretly plotting against him. She needed him totally isolated, ensuring that he had absolutely nowhere to turn except right back to her. The royal christening of Archie in July 2019 publicly proved how total that control had become. Meghan flat out rejected the official photographers and refused to even name the godparents. Like that was not enough already, she absolutely denied the basic constitutional transparency that royal births have strictly demanded for generations, treating her own son's powerful place in the line of succession like some private family secret that the entire institution had zero right to even document. Sophie read that exact moment without a single drop of ambiguity. This was no simple privacy preference. It was a bold declaration that the heavy rules of the crown officially ended at Meghan's front door, going absolutely no further than she personally permitted. Behind tightly closed doors during this exact period, Meghan was directly telling the staff that her position as a duchess meant total equality. With Catherine ignoring the hierarchy beneath her, she demanded the exact same security team, the same royal budget, and the same global platform. Wild right, when officials shut down those demands by pointing to constitutional laws that had always governed. For centuries, the family had its rules, but Meghan wasn't buying it. She took every single rejection, every denial, and, stick with me, she built a total victim narrative, claiming she was treated differently because of her race. She was being completely pushed down. This whole victim architecture was being built brick by brick, and it was designed entirely to manipulate a massive global audience. When Sophie finally reached out in 2020, offering her direct personal guidance, it was totally genuine. Coming from a woman who actually survived that exact same terrifying jump, from normal civilian life straight into royal duties, Sophie knew the crushing pressure. She lived it. So she offered to share absolutely everything she knew. Meghan's response, just 3 words. I have Harry, she said. And that was all she needed. Sophie didn't see that as some polite rejection. She heard a massive red flag, a declaration of absolute ownership. Meghan had zero interest in learning how these ancient institutions actually operated. She was totally focused on holding a complete monopoly over Harry's loyalty. No outside voices were allowed to reach him at all, and nobody outside the palace's inner circle had a clue how toxic things had become. What was going down behind closed legal doors? Way darker than any of the public drama we all saw. It all started with a massive lawsuit. In early 2020, Meghan filed a legal strike against the Mail on Sunday. The paper actually published a handwritten letter she sent to her estranged dad, Thomas Markle. Meghan claimed leaking this letter completely violated her strict privacy. On the absolute surface, this whole case looks super simple. Just a woman protecting private messages from a tabloid that clearly had overstepped. But watch closely underneath that clean surface, something incredibly dangerous was brewing. Every lawsuit goes through discovery. That's the brutal stage where both sides are legally forced to cough up secret documents, private texts and records. And the discovery phase right here had the raw power to expose an absolute disaster for Meghan. It threatened to drag the entire hidden history of her private media chats right into an open courtroom. Every secret link with British journalists. See, the public story Meghan had been heavily pushing was about a helpless woman hunted down by a ruthless press. But the hidden text this lawsuit might expose, they told a wildly different tale. Meghan's own legal team saw the massive danger, quietly telling her to hide a huge chunk of those secret press contacts. The royal legal squad saw the catastrophic exposure risk perfectly too. But poor Harry had no idea about any of it. According to absolute insiders, he was completely kept in the dark, handed only a watered-down version of events. They just told him the lawsuit was strictly about guarding their privacy. But nobody warned Harry that this was actually about burying a paper trail. Evidence that would totally nuke the fake story they were prepping for. Oprah's cameras. Now, you and I need to look closely at this letter because it wasn't what it seemed at all. Before Meghan even mailed it out, Palace PR staff actually reviewed a draft. And get this, at least one top aide threw up a massive red flag. The issue was super specific and incredibly sketchy. Certain lines in that document were completely calculated. written for two totally different audiences at the exact same time. The words felt raw design to absolutely crush her dad on a personal level, but they were also perfectly staged to sound exactly like the desperate cry of a heartbroken daughter if it ever leaked, meaning this thing was a masterpiece. It operated in the shadows as a lethal weapon and publicly as a flawless shield. Thomas handed it straight to the press. And while the judge ruled in Meghan's favor, the trial accidentally exposed something huge, a truth that nobody could sweep under the rug anymore. At the exact moment Meghan was crying to her dad about the crushing pain of being smeared by the vicious media, five of her best friends were quietly feeding anonymous coordinated quotes straight to People magazine about the exact same drama. This wasn't random. It wasn't some wild coincidence. It was a fully orchestrated strike, a tearful private letter to her father running perfectly parallel with a massive covert PR campaign designed to farm global sympathy, right alongside each other, controlled by the exact same people. Sophie didn't even bring up the letter directly when she finally snapped back in public. She honestly didn't need to. She just dropped a bomb saying Meghan took standard family drama and literally weaponized it into a human rights crisis. That letter, that was phase one of the rebrand. The Oprah interview was where she launched it globally. And Sophie called out exactly what that sit down was. It wasn't just some terrified victim bravely finding her voice. No way. It was a ruthless, calculated commercial launch. And the entire brand being pushed was built completely on the ashes of the Windsor family's reputation. But the timing, that made it so much worse. Sophie reached out multiple times before it aired, offering a lifeline. Trust me, we haven't even seen the craziest part. Stick with me, we are diving straight into a massive royal betrayal. Every peace offering was ignored. Then the interview hit. It aired right when Prince Philip was literally fighting for his life in a hospital cardiac unit. The man was 99 years old. The palace didn't see this as some desperate cry for help from a struggling family member. Oh no. To them, it was a cold, calculated strike, timed perfectly to do maximum damage when the crown was completely exposed and vulnerable. And honestly, it was not the first time they weaponized timing either. Remember that Sussex Netflix trailer? It conveniently dropped right in the middle of Earthshot Prince William's absolute biggest project. And their holiday special dropped specifically to clash with Catherine's Christmas concert. Every single major move the Sussexes made was basically a targeted attack on a huge royal milestone. The pattern was locked in, the damage never an accident. So by the time we saw Harry sitting on the California lawn, something deep inside him looked totally gone. The guy sitting next to Meghan during that broadcast was completely isolated from his own bloodline, cut off from every single friend, every single bond he ever had before. Meghan showed up. He was basically handed a script to perform a narrative he didn't even write. And worse, he couldn't find a way out of it. The scariest part, he actually believed every single word coming out of his mouth. But what Harry and Meghan totally failed to grasp was simple. This ancient institution they were trying to tear down, it had survived way worse threats than anything these two could throw at it. The crown was still standing. They weren't. And the absolute brutal consequences of their action were finally catching up to them. The children's fate, the royal legacy, and that massive threat made before the summit. Now pay attention because this is where it gets crazy. Sophie took a breath. She stated the crown never actually demanded a DNA test. Silence. She let that heavy truth sink in. Then she explained that when people question why those kids' royal titles weren't instantly announced and confirmed to the public, the answer is just one word: discretion. And in this strict hierarchy, discretion doesn't just mean proving biology, it means proving true loyalty and intention. The entire studio froze, dead silent. That exact clip exploded across social media worldwide before Sophie could even finish her sentence. She didn't use the word fraud. She never directly accused a single person of lying. She didn't have to. Just dropping the word discretion right there with that dramatic pause. It was basically a live grenade. And she pulled the pin right on live television. To grasp why this caused such massive shockwaves, you and I both know what transparency usually means, right? But inside the royal family, completely different game. For hundreds of years, any birth tied to the royal bloodline requires the palace to heavily document and publicly prove the exact lineage of any future heirs. This isn't just basic paperwork, it is a hardcore constitutional duty backed by centuries of absolute law. So when Meghan blocked that transparency for Archie and Liette, she wasn't just making some modern choice about privacy. She flat out stopped the palace from doing a critical duty they've done flawlessly for generations. Meghan basically created a massive black hole where proof should have been sitting. And the crazy rumors that filled that gap, not made up by angry reporters or a hateful public, it was sparked by an actual, legit member of the family. You literally can't weaponize the system and then cry for its royal perks. Archie and Lilith's titles strictly depended on keeping trust and transparency with the crown. Meghan shattered that trust into pieces, so those titles didn't just automatically drop. Now, what happened at the infamous Sandringham Summit in January 2020 was never leaked. And honestly, it's the darkest chapter of this whole saga. This summit, pure panic mode, Queen Elizabeth, Prince Charles, Prince William, and Prince Harry all sat down to hash out terms for the Sussexes fleeing their royal duties. It was already an insanely heartbreaking day for the family. But right before the real meeting started, Harry pulled his dad away for a tense private chat, based on heavy royal research and backed up by inside palace sources. Harry looked right at Charles and warned that if Meghan's strict demands weren't met, meaning they're keeping their royal titles, total financial freedom outside the firm, and getting publicly funded security. Then Meghan promised an interview with a huge American network that would be 10 times worse than any scandal this family ever faced. Harry literally threatened his own flesh and blood for his wife, who wasn't even in the room. Charles just went dead silent for the longest time. Then he stared at his son and asked him one brutal question. Did Meghan even comprehend the monster she was threatening? Harry had zero response. The Queen heard everything before talk started. So what do we make of this? The real war is just beginning. Stick with me here, because insiders say that single private chat changed everything. Queen Elizabeth's view of Meghan flipped from totally complicated to absolutely and permanently shattered. The public remembers the famous Sandringham Summit as just a really messy family argument. But behind those closed doors, the royal institution finally realized they weren't just dealing with some stubborn daughter-in-law anymore. The terrifying reality finally hit them hard. They were practically being held at gunpoint by her. Then summer 2022 hits, and the Sussex camp pulls a stunt that left the palace staff absolutely fuming, like shaking with rage. Queen Elizabeth was 96. Her health had been failing hard for months, and her public sightings dropping to almost zero. The whole nation quietly knew, with heavy hearts, that her legendary 70-year reign was ending. Everyone was getting ready to say their final goodbyes to the iconic woman who literally carried the crown for 7 decades. Meanwhile, what were Meghan and Harry's lawyers doing? Busy filing massive trademark papers in America for a brand new empire called Royal Globe. These legal documents covered movies, massive podcast deals, lifestyle merch, and educational content across an absolutely wild range of commercial markets. Building an empire like that takes months of intense legal plotting and pure strategic planning to pull off. Now watch this timing. While the Queen was dying, the Sussex crew filed papers cashing in on the exact royal identity Meghan had spent 2 whole years tearing to shreds on television. Palace insiders called this backstage betrayal one of the sickest, most disrespectful moves they had ever seen from the Sussex camp in its entire history. The Queen passed away on September 8, 2022. Those massive trademark grabs had been pushed through, weeks before she even took her final breath. Monetizing the monarchy's ultimate heartbreak was legally locked down, while the family matriarch was still alive. Charles dropped his absolute final ruling by late 2024, and the message was brutal. No more fake Sandringham summits, no more media-friendly family reunions, zero olive branches coming from the palace. Sophie dropped this massive bombshell without blinking once. The door wasn't just locked, she revealed. It was bricked up completely. Harry's endless legal, war-demanding taxpayer-funded bodyguards hit right when this drama peaked, making him look completely out of touch. By early 2024, he was throwing cash at lawyers to literally buy British police protection, all while holding zero royal rank, doing absolutely no public service, and chilling full-time in his California mansion. Sophie ripped that demand to pieces. I know what you're thinking, rich people buy security all the time. But she argued, this sets a terrifying rule where elite British cops become bodyguards for hire to anyone with a fancy title, even if they refuse to serve the country at all. She straight up compared his situation to Prince Andrew, and wow, that comparison was a calculated kill shot. Andrew lost his royal guards the second his official duties vanished. The king made it crystal clear, no special treatment, no bargaining. Harry wanted the armor, Sophie pointed out, without ever fighting on the battlefield. But was he wrong? Honestly, the royal family is thriving without him, and Meghan dragging them down. Honestly, their exile feels like a massive upgrade now. The crown always survives. Catherine became the anchor left behind. As Sophie wrapped her speech, one single massive photo flashed onto the screen. Catherine, Princess of Wales, standing tall next to King Charles at Sandringham. No fake smiles, no acting. She was just there, powerful, calm, and totally owning the massive destiny she chose to build for herself. Sophie had literally spent 5 solid hours breaking down the difference between someone using the crown for Instagram fame and a true queen who made the monarchy her absolute life mission. That picture said everything. Sophie hyping up Catherine on live television wasn't just sweet talk. It was a brutal declaration of the crown's survival shown perfectly through 2 completely different women who entered the exact same palace, but chose opposite paths when the pressure hit. Catherine Sophie explained knew from day one that wearing the crown is an absolutely brutal marathon. She knew every boring untelevised royal duty was basically an investment into a legacy that pays off over centuries, not some quick cash grab. While Meghan kicked the doors down, demanding to rewrite the royal rulebook, Catherine spent years quietly mastering the brutal training and deadly pacing without ever complaining once. Sophie exposed a huge moment from late 2025 that perfectly summed up this entire insane rivalry. Right when Catherine launched her massive Christmas charity special focusing entirely on humble public service and community love, Meghan's Hollywood team dropped a Netflix special at the exact same time. You and I both know that was no accident. Let's look at this identical PR playbook they ran for years, like timing the Oprah interview right to Philip's hospitalization. Absolutely ruthless. Or dropping that explosive Netflix trailer directly during William's Earthshot event, and the holiday content scheduled perfectly against the Royal Christmas Carol service. The strategy, never subtle, never changed. But listen to this Catherine's concert pulled. 8.4 million viewers. Meanwhile, Meghan's special couldn't even crack the UK top 10. The audience clearly made their judgment loud and clear, zero prompting needed. By late 2025, the hard stats across absolutely every single measurable category told the brutal truth. In the UK, Catherine's favourability was sitting pretty at 73%. William held strong at 69%. Meghan's completely crashed to 17%. And worse, Spotify totally cut ties with the Sussex brand forever. Netflix drastically slashed their big financial backing. And those Archwell Foundation donations basically nosedived by 40%. That whole Royal Glow lifestyle operation Meghan tried to build up after Oprah, dead on arrival, it found zero sustainable audience, mostly because the core premise rested on a massive contradiction the public saw through immediately. Now pay attention here, you cannot publicly torch an entire institution, brand it absolutely cruel, and then try to bottle up and sell its exclusive prestige. The global audience completely caught the blazing hypocrisy, even when Meghan pretended it wasn't there. Sophie spelled it out. You cannot abandon a family, label them toxic, and try to peddle their royal glow as cheap lifestyle merchandise. People aren't that stupid. And the palace intentionally choosing total silence through the dramatic Netflix doc, through 5 exhausting years of relentless public attacks from the Sussex PR machine. That was a cold, calculated master strategy. They fully understood exactly how this kind of endless performative drama stays alive. We both know how this works, fighting someone whose entire brand relies on having a massive enemy just gives them the oxygen they desperately need to burn. King Charles and William chose a different path, letting the silent work speak. Flashy state visits, constant charity engagements, that big Christmas concert, and the incredibly patient, real accumulation of heavy public duty. No fancy Hollywood production company can ever fake that simply because it demands decades of authentic grind. As Sophie pointed out, they never sued, never publicly fired back. They just bolted the doors and walked right on by, leaving the Sussexes as wealthy exiles holding empty titles. They had 0 roles, 0 palace budget, and worst of all, 0 actual influence over anything that truly mattered inside the royal machine. So, what do you and I take from Sophie's final argument? This whole Sussex disruption simply had never fractured.